When it comes to creativity in magic, I think some people just don't have it. They're not creative.
First time I ever met Bruce Servan, Jim Patton, Castle Bar. First time I worked in the Castle. And Bruce says to me, "Hey kid, what original stuff do you do?" And I said, "Honestly, Bruce, I know where all my ideas come from. I'm not comfortable saying any of it's original. I have little tweaks and turns and twists." And Patton looked at me and gave me the wink like, "That was the right answer, kid."
I don't believe it's necessarily important to be creative in magic. I do believe it is important to express yourself, whatever your art form. Whether you're creative or not, whether you're a MacGyver of magic or whatever art form, that's up to you. But it is actually being able to convey the feeling of magic to your audience. That's the most important. Whether they're your tricks or someone else's, secondary.
You know, some magicians maybe are good at adopting good tricks. They select the tricks that fit their personality, and they're good at delivering it. And there are many examples. I won't even mention anybody. And some are very good at making small adaptations and changes. And some are just amazing. Everything they do is like original. The name that comes to mind is Tommy Wander, who, for the most part, invented new mechanics and techniques and methods. Of course, relying on some stuff from the past. I mean, we all evolve somehow, but really creative, great performer, great everything.
So it's not only the secrets. Everybody thinks of creativity; they immediately think of only effects, and I think that's not the case at all. Some guys aren't creative at creating methods and coming up with routines, but they're creative at staging, and they're creative at pattern, and they're creative at different things. So you can be successful, very successful, without being a creative, quote unquote, person. I think definitely, because it's out there for us. From really smart guys who came up with it already. So.
You can absolutely be successful in magic without creating new tricks or new methods. There's so much great magic in our literature that is untouched, that magicians could go through and find tricks that haven't been seen or done in 20 years or 100 years and put together an act of material that is unlike what anyone else is doing and never invent a trick or a method. But I do think if you're going to stand in front of an audience and perform, you need a level of creativity, at least in the way that you express yourself.
I think a prime example of that would be Paul Rosini. He was one of the top nightclub workers in the world. I don't remember ever reading a single trick that he ever invented, but he took other people's. He was very friendly with Vernon. And a lot of the things that he performed, a lot of the card tricks in particular, were things that he got from Vernon. And he was apparently, from everything I've read and heard, a master showman.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of magicians who are very successful without being particularly creative. And what a lot of people don't, outside of the field of magic, maybe don't understand is that when they're watching a magician on stage, they might be seeing a person who had many teachers and mentors, some directly, some indirectly, and that the magic they see being performed in that act might be things that go back 400 years and that have been modernized in terms of what the materials are. And maybe one person came up with this particular physical version of the objects, and a different person came up with a routine for it, and a third person helped write the story, and another person did the music. So just like when you're watching a film, it's not solely the end result is not the result of just the writer or just the director or just the actors. It's really a collaborative form. And even though we might just be watching a singular performer, there's lots of invisible collaboration that goes on in what we're watching.
The creativity is only, the process for to invent, for to create something, but it's not the more important when you are front the spectators. When you are front the spectator, the more important is are you, not what are you doing. What are you doing too, but the more important are you. The creative is only a way. It's possible Fred Capps is not a very good creative magician, but he's great when you see him performance. I think the creative is very good in the life, not only in the magic, in the life, but it's not the more important when you are front people, from spectators, I think.
Do we define creativity as coming up with a completely original idea that's never been seen before on the face of the planet? Possibly. I've observed over time that most of those kinds of ideas that are brand spanking new are fascinating in their own way, and they're entirely novel, and they're usually not worth crap.
I mean, let's back up. It depends on what you want to do in magic and what your goals are, you know. If you want to show some tricks to your friends and family, or maybe do a show or two a year at a Cub Scout thing, then no, it's hardly valuable at all to be creative. In fact, you do better, I think, learning to do the classics and do them well rather than inventing a trick of your own that's not as good as the cups and balls. If you want to lecture to magicians and sell products, then creativity is almost the whole game for you. Having ideas that are novel and introducing, you know, originality and novelty into your stuff is the product that you're selling.
Well, you know, I try and be creative. I've tried to be creative since I met Marlo, and it was because I was creative that I got to sit with him a lot and understand what's going on. And now I write a magic bulletin, and I try and come up with something new every month. And that is not easy to do because I have many, many things in print. So you read what you can, and you look and see on YouTube and DVDs and what have you. And after that, you get an idea. Maybe you don't get an idea, but I've done it for almost 40 months. So I've published 40 different bulletins. And it's the thing that I strive for the most. But it's not just to be creative, it's to come up with good things. Because you can be creative and have a bunch of throwaways. And I'm trying to be creative and come up with good magic that I can do.
Creativity is being an artist, you know. You can be a parrot, a copyist, or you can be an originator. And by you know, bringing what you believe is magic and how to bring it about and make it a real thing.
I've seen professional magicians that I really admire that just do classics and have never invented a trick in their lives. But they have something original in their point of view and the way they present magic, creative in that way. And then there are professional magicians who are wildly creative. You know, Gaetan comes to mind.
There are people like Vernon himself, who was not considered the most original of our artists. He was a wonderful synthesizer. He would take an idea from over here, put it in this routine over here, combine it with a thought from this gentleman over here. Next thing you knew, he had something that looked totally different than anything that came before it, even though it wasn't different, like the linking rings, for instance. Okay? People have done that for thousands of years. Once Vernon got his hands on it, we'd never seen anything quite like it.
You know, there's an art in picking a repertoire. There's an art in putting pieces together in an order. I mean, I can create a playlist or a mixtape that makes you feel something. And there's creativity involved in that. Is it important to do all original material? Absolutely not. But I think the more you become in tune to your own personal voice and your strengths and weaknesses, the more original your material becomes, because you have no other choice.
For me, it's also a way of looking at things. I like to, I find it to be just part of my life and something that I live with every day, and I think I'd be lost without it.
The conceit of magic is that if you have the powers or if you have the capabilities, anything is possible. That approaching impossibility is where it begins. It's not where it ends. How do I create the convincing theatrical representation of being able to do something that's actually impossible? And that's really, I think that's not a bad, inelegant definition of magic, is the theatrical creation of the sense that someone can achieve something that is otherwise believed to be impossible.
Some creativity is required if you want to do certain things in magic. Less creativity is required if you want to do other things in magic. I do think that the more imagination you bring to it, the more satisfying it is in general for most magicians. Is that a good, fair answer?
That's a great answer. All right.